I have been listening to your responses this morning, and I'm really glad that you've done a complete U-turn on the inquiry to be set up to investigate these allegations made by the women of honour. I think all of us were absolutely shocked and sickened that women of different ages had to go on public radio and bare their souls and their private lives to bring about real change. When I heard a young member of the Defence Forces saying she was pinned against the counter, sexually assaulted, and all she could say to a senior officer was, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." I mean, that just absolutely sickened me, and I felt such rage and anger on her behalf. And that's why I put down the detailed question to you, asking what procedures and what processes will you use to appoint people to this inquiry to make sure it's an independent inquiry?
Yeah, well, I can assure deputies that that appropriate action will be taken on the footer of recommendations from a review that needs to be independent and comprehensive. And I'm absolutely committed to making sure that that happens, and I'm committed to ensuring that the women who've been brave enough to come forward are part of the process of setting up that review mechanism to make sure that that everybody has full confidence in it. That's what we're trying to do. Dr. Tom Clonan made a very valuable contribution more than 20 years ago in relation to his doctoral thesis. After that contribution, there actually was, as I outlined earlier, quite a number of things happened in terms of structural change and systems and procedures. There were 3 different independent monitoring groups. Dr. Eileen Doyle headed up that process and did a number of reports and made a whole series of recommendations. I actually was at the publication of some of those reports and recommendations when I was last Minister for Defence, and there was certainly an understanding that processes and procedures were being put in place to try to deal effectively with bullying and harassment in the Defence Forces. Clearly that hasn't resulted in the kind of change that's needed. And that's why this fundamental review is now needed to make sure that we get it right this time.
I think really we've heard some very ugly truths about how some people in positions of power continue not to behave but to operate, because that's what it is, operating within a certain culture. Now, is it a minority, is it a majority? We don't know. I agree with my colleague. We wait outcomes. We wait for results. But I suppose my question to you is, why have the reviews and the structures and systems that have been put in place already, why have they not worked? I have no doubt, Minister, that there were some very well-meaning people who tried hard. So I think that's a really important point, not just for the Defence Forces, but for society at large. And finally, we mentioned Tom Clonan, and I actually wrote to you. I've never done it before, but I asked you, when appointing people to the inquiry, that not that you appoint him, but that you would consider him with all qualified others because of his extensive background and expertise.
Well, can I just say for the record, I'm not making any assumptions in my statements today. And if people took that from what I said earlier, that I'm not prejudging any outcomes from an independent review. That'll be a matter for a robust and independent process that involves skilled and experienced people. They will make their judgments and they'll make their recommendations, and we will deal with the truth of that. And I just want to say that in relation to Deputy Connolly's questions, we haven't agreed yet, Deputy, a timeline. We haven't even finalised the terms of the review. We're going through a process with other stakeholders, including the Women of Honour and including a group of women in the Defence Forces, and we will meet the representative bodies before we finalise all of that. So I can't give you the answer to those questions, but I hope you understand that we need to go through a process here rather than trying to give quick answers. We want to make sure that we do this properly, give it enough time, and make sure that the right people are are involved in that review. In relation to individual cases, I have seen some protected disclosures that have come to me. I can't speak about those publicly. I'm not allowed to legally. And of course, we have a process within the Department of Defence to deal appropriately with
Sorry, Minister,
protected disclosures.
For this question. I have to move on
when
to
they
the
come.
next question.
Thank you.
Apologies.